This is the biggest lie heavy metal ever sold you. But what if I told you some of the biggest legends in heavy metal history don't live like rock stars at all? No mansions, no supercars, no insane luxury lifestyle. Instead, a tiny apartment, a normal suburban house, even a day job. These are not failed musicians. These are icons, legends, millionaires, and yet they chose a completely different life. 20 heavy metal legends who live shockingly poor lives. 1. Lemmy Kilmister, Ian Fraser. Kilmister, known universally as Lemmy, was not simply the frontman and bassist of Motorhead. He was the entire engine of the band. His graveled bass-forward vocals, his thunderous playing style, and his signature mutton chop sideburns made him one of the most visually and sonically distinct figures in the history of rock and roll. Motorhead sold over 30 million albums worldwide and maintained a continuous, unbroken presence in music for 40 years. That is not a footnote. That is a career that outlasted entire generations of trends. Now, here is the part that stops people cold every time. For the last 25 years of his life, Lemmy lived in a small, rent-controlled two-bedroom apartment just off the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. The reason he stayed was simple, and he said it himself. The apartment was 2 blocks from the Rainbow Bar and Grill, which functioned as his second home for decades. He was there almost every day, playing video poker, talking to people, being a fixture of a community he genuinely loved. His measure of wealth was not square footage. It was proximity to the people and places that mattered to him. He lived exactly as he chose to live and passed away on his own terms. No compromise, no performance of wealth, just the life he actually wanted. 2. Geezer Butler. You cannot discuss the origins of heavy metal without starting with Black Sabbath, and you cannot discuss Black Sabbath without acknowledging that Geezer Butler was the band's primary lyrical architect. While Tony Iommi's down-tuned guitar riffs are the sound most people associate with the band, it was Butler who gave those riffs their meaning. He wrote the words to War Pigs. He wrote Iron Man. He shaped the dark, apocalyptic worldview that defined what heavy metal would say and think about for generations. Black Sabbath sold over 70 million records. Their commercial impact is beyond serious dispute. What gets overlooked almost every time is where Butler came from. He grew up in Aston, Birmingham, in a large Irish Catholic family with 6 other siblings. Working class background. That is not a detail that washes away when money arrives. For many people, that early formation is permanent. Despite the wealth that Black Sabbath generated, Butler has consistently avoided the performative excess that consumed many of his contemporaries. No fleet of cars, no sprawling estates purchased and abandoned. His money went into careful investments. His energy and resources have gone significantly into his work as a passionate vegan and animal rights activist. He has lived comfortably, but he has not lived extravagantly. For a man who helped invent one of the most commercially successful genres in music history, that is a notable choice. 3. Angus Young. AC/DC has sold over 200 million records. That places them among the highest-selling musical acts in the entire history of recorded music. Their 1980 album Back in Black is one of the best-selling albums ever released anywhere in the world. The wealth generated by that level of success is, by any reasonable measure, almost impossible to quantify from the outside. Angus Young, the band's lead guitarist and most iconic visual element, the schoolboy uniform, the duck walk, the lightning-fast solos, has lived for decades in a modest home in a suburb of Sydney, Australia. Not a compound, not a landmark property, a house in a suburb. He rarely gives interviews. He does not attend celebrity events or industry parties. He does not participate in the public performance of fame in any meaningful way. People who know him describe a genuinely quiet, humble man whose entire orientation is toward music. Everything else was a byproduct of that. The contrast between what he generates on a stage, that kinetic, electrifying, physically exhausting performance, and who he actually is when he walks off it, is one of the most striking contradictions in the history of the genre. 4. Kirk Windstein. Kirk Windstein built his reputation through Crowbar and Down, bands that carry enormous weight and influence within heavy music circles globally. The kind of influence that earns genuine reverence from other musicians and a fiercely dedicated fan base. That kind of influence does not always translate into financial security, and Windstein has been honest about exactly that. For much of his career, Windstein has lived a genuinely working-class life. He has spoken publicly and directly about taking regular employment between tours to support his family, not as a last resort, as a reality. The modern music industry, particularly for artists who operate outside of mainstream commercial formats, does not generate the income that album sales once provided. Streaming economics have fundamentally restructured what musicians earn. Windstein lives in a regular house, deals with ordinary bills, and navigates the same financial pressures that most working people manage. He has talked about this openly, rather than maintaining a fiction of rock star prosperity. That honesty is important. It gives an accurate picture of what a career in music actually looks like for the vast majority of working musicians, even those who are legitimately legendary within their genre. 5. Tom Araya, Slayer. Slayer's name alone carries enough weight to end an argument about intensity in music. As one of the big four of thrash metal, alongside Metallica, Megadeth, and Anthrax, they spent nearly 4 decades as one of the most aggressive, uncompromising, and popular metal bands on Earth. Tom Araya, as the band's bassist and primary vocalist, was the face and voice of all of it. His shouted vocal delivery and commanding stage presence made him a defining figure in the genre. The life he actually lives is about as far from that image as it is possible to get. Araya is a deeply religious family man. He has lived for many years on a large ranch in a small town in Texas. He raises cattle. He spends his time with his wife and 2 children. In interviews, he comes across as soft-spoken, measured, and genuinely content. He made a deliberate decision to step away from the touring lifestyle and put his family at the center of his life. The mosh pit gave way to pasture. He appears to have no regrets about that exchange. 6. Scott Ian. Scott Ian co-founded Anthrax and has been the band's rhythm guitarist and primary identity since the beginning. Anthrax distinguished themselves within the Big Four by bringing a punk energy and a genuine sense of humor into thrash metal, a combination that set them apart from their contemporaries and gave them a different kind of longevity. Ian lives in Los Angeles, a city that is almost entirely organized around the performance of status. He does not participate in that performance. His public social media presence is dominated by family content, school events, family trips, ordinary domestic life. He has spoken at length about fatherhood and what it has meant to his sense of priorities. He tours the world with Anthrax and then comes home and helps with homework. Both of those things are true simultaneously. He has built a life where neither one cancels out the other. 7. Dave Mustaine. Dave Mustaine's biography contains one of the most dramatic pivots in rock music history. He was fired from Metallica before the band recorded their first album. He went on to found Megadeth, which became one of the best-selling and most technically accomplished metal bands ever to exist. He built an entire second legacy specifically to prove a point, and by most measures, he succeeded. The early years after Metallica included the excess and turbulence that you would expect from someone with that kind of chip on his shoulder and that level of talent pointed in a direction powered by resentment. That period is well documented, and Mustaine himself has not denied it. What happened later is the part that matters for this discussion. Mustaine found sobriety, stability, and a different framework for how he wanted to live. He relocated to a quiet ranch in Tennessee, away from every industry hub. He became a serious martial artist, earning black belts in multiple disciplines. He owns a vineyard. He has built a portfolio of businesses and manages them with genuine seriousness. He traded the chaos for something that required more of him in a different way. 8. Corey Taylor. Corey Taylor has been the voice of two of modern metal's most significant bands simultaneously. Slipknot, known globally for their masked theatrical performances and enormous fan base, which operates in a more accessible hard rock register. He is one of the most recognizable and respected voices in heavy music produced in the last 25 years. He lives in Las Vegas. He does not live in Las Vegas in the way that phrase usually implies. He lives in a regular suburban house. He drives a sensible hybrid car. He flies coach. That last point is the one that consistently gets a reaction from people who hear it. A man who headlines festivals and fronts one of the biggest metal bands on the planet, books coach seating because spending thousands of dollars for a first-class ticket to reach the same destination does not make sense to him. That is not performance. That is just how he thinks about money. He has spoken in multiple interviews about being careful with his finances, about the discipline required to maintain stability when your income is tied to the music industry, and about the priority he places on his role as a husband and father. His home life is structured and calm, a deliberate counterweight to the controlled chaos that Slipknot represents professionally. 9. Joe Duplantier. Gojira emerged from France as one of the most critically respected and intellectually rigorous metal bands of their generation. Their music combines technical death metal precision with a genuine ecological and philosophical consciousness that distinguishes them from almost everything else in the genre. Joe Duplantier leads the band as frontman and guitarist and is the primary creative architect behind their sound. His approach to how he lives reflects the same values that run through the music. For years, he lived in a rustic, largely self-built home in rural France. When he relocated to New York, he did not move into a Manhattan penthouse. He and his brother, who is Gojira's drummer, built their own recording studio in Brooklyn. They designed it, they built it with their hands, and they use it. The studio is the center of his working life, and building it himself was a meaningful act rather than simply hiring someone to construct a facility. His life is organized around creativity, craftsmanship, family, and a relationship to physical, tangible work. The same values that shape the band's lyrics about the natural world and humanity's relationship to it shape the actual daily decisions he makes about how to live. 10. Devin Townsend. Devin Townsend is a singular figure in progressive and extreme metal. His work with Strapping Young Lad and his sprawling, prolific, frequently genre-defying solo career have earned him a devoted international following that borders on cult status. He is capable of brutal extreme metal, orchestral grandeur, and absurdist humor, sometimes within the same record. The range is legitimate, and it has built him a career that has lasted decades. What Townsend has done that very few artists at his level of recognition do is speak with complete transparency about his financial reality. He is not a millionaire. He lives in a regular house in a suburb of Vancouver, Canada, with his family. He has discussed budgeting publicly. He has streamed himself working from his home studio, which is modest rather than professional by industry standards. He has explained that, even for an artist with his reputation and catalog, a career in music in the modern era is a middle-class existence if you are careful, and it requires real financial discipline to maintain. That transparency is genuinely valuable, and it is rare. It gives an accurate picture of what the economics of a music career actually look like for the overwhelming majority of working artists, even celebrated ones. 11. Michael Poulsen. Volbeat. Volbeat built their audience through an unusual combination. Heavy metal infrastructure carrying rockabilly and classic rock and roll melodic sensibility on top of it. The result is a sound that crossed geographic and demographic boundaries in ways that more traditional metal bands rarely achieve. They sell out arenas around the world. Michael Poulsen writes the songs and fronts the band. Despite that international reach, Poulsen has never relocated to an industry center. He still lives in Denmark. He maintains the roots that the band came from. He is a devoted father and spends his time away from touring with his family rather than in the public orbit of the music industry. He has invested thoughtfully rather than lavishly. His personal luxury, by his own description, is his collection of old records and vintage memorabilia. That is not the lifestyle the scale of Volbeat's success might suggest, and that appears to be exactly the point. 12. Fenriz, Darkthrone. Darkthrone are not a band that has ever compromised with commercial expectation in any direction. They are foundational to Norwegian black metal, a genre defined in part by its aggressive rejection of mainstream accessibility. Fenriz, whose legal name is Gilva Nagel, is one of the band's 2 core members. Darkthrone has never played a live show. They have never chased mainstream recognition. They have made music entirely on their own terms since the beginning. Fenriz has worked for many years as a postal service employee in Norway. He listens to records, he hikes in forests, he works on music. His life is quiet, consistent, and private. The story that best captures who he is became widely circulated because it is genuinely extraordinary. He was asked to appear on a backup list of potential candidates for his local town council, a precautionary measure, not a serious campaign. He agreed, likely confident he would never actually be selected. He submitted a photograph of himself holding his cat with the caption, "Please don't vote for me." The people of his town voted for him anyway, apparently finding the entire situation amusing. He was elected. He served on the town council. A man who has spent his entire adult life actively avoiding any form of public attention was conscripted into civic duty by popular Democratic vote. It is one of the more genuinely funny biographical details in the history of any genre. 13. H.S.A.H.N. Emperor changed what was thought to be possible within black metal. Their music was symphonic in scope, technically demanding, and compositionally sophisticated in ways that went far beyond what anyone in the genre had attempted. Ihsahn, born Vegard Sverre Tveiten, was the creative center of that band. He was doing this work while still a teenager. The music he produced in those years has influenced an enormous number of subsequent artists across multiple genres. After Emperor's classic period concluded, Ihsahn developed a successful and critically respected solo career. He did not relocate to a major city or insert himself into any industry scene. He stayed in Notodden, Norway. For many years, alongside his own musical output, he worked as a music teacher at the local school. He is a husband, a father, and a recognized member of his community. Not in the sense that fame makes someone locally prominent, but in the ordinary sense of someone who participates in where he lives and is known as a person rather than a persona. He has talked about how maintaining that separation between the artist Ihsahn and the man Vegard has been essential to his sense of balance and continuity. 14. Chuck Schuldiner. Chuck Schuldiner's influence on death metal is foundational and essentially undisputed within serious conversations about the genre's history. Through his band Death, he continuously pushed against the boundaries of what extreme metal could do technically, melodically, and compositionally. He is broadly credited as the originator of death metal as a coherent genre. That is not a minor distinction. His personal life reflected none of the typical trappings of rock recognition. He lived quietly in Florida. He was deeply devoted to his pets, particularly his dogs. His life was structured around writing music and spending time with his family and animals. He was not interested in fame as an outcome. He was interested in the music itself and in whether he was making the best version of whatever he was working on. Fame was incidental. He died from a brain tumor at a young age. His catalog, the records he made with death and later control denied, stands as the complete record of someone who gave everything to his craft and was never distracted from it by anything the industry might have offered. 15. Bruce Dickinson. Iron Maiden has sold over 100 million albums. They have played sold-out stadium shows on every continent for decades. Bruce Dickinson's voice, operatic in range, precise in control, enormous in volume, is among the most technically accomplished in the history of rock music in any subgenre. The things Dickinson does with his time outside of Iron Maiden are the details that make his biography unusual by any standard. He holds a commercial airline pilot license. For years, he flew Boeing 757s as a captain for a commercial airline. He piloted Iron Maiden's own customized jumbo jet, the Ed Force One, during their world tours, flying the band and crew between continents. He is a competitive fencer at a level well above recreational. He has written novels. He has hosted radio programs. He has run businesses. His approach to personal spending, by contrast, is famously straightforward. He has talked about mending his own clothes rather than replacing them. He buys his jeans from regular department stores. He sees no logical reason to pay a premium for a label when the function is identical. This has not affected modesty. This is how he actually thinks about expenditure. His resources go into experiences, skills, and learning, not into displays. 16. James Hetfield. Metallica are the largest heavy metal band in the history of the format by any commercial metric. Their records have sold hundreds of millions of copies. Their stadium tours are among the highest grossing in music at any given cycle. James Hetfield, as the band's rhythmic foundation and primary vocalist, has accumulated personal wealth at a scale that is genuinely difficult to comprehend. In his earlier years, his life reflected the chaos that often accompanies that level of success. That period of his life is documented and acknowledged. What happened later is the story that matters here. He moved his family from the San Francisco Bay Area to Colorado, into the mountains, specifically to give his children a different relationship to the natural world than they would have had in the urban Bay Area environment. He became a serious beekeeper, not as a hobby undertaken for appearances, but as a genuine practice that he has spoken about finding deeply calming and purposeful. He became a skilled woodworker and welder, producing custom furniture and art objects by hand. The satisfaction of making something physical and concrete with hands and tools and materials became important to him in a way that the abstract processes of the music industry do not replicate. He found a version of his life that works for him, and it looks nothing like the image. 17. Rob Halford. Judas Priest are one of the defining bands of heavy metal's second wave. Their records sold over 50 million copies. Rob Halford's voice, multi-octave, soaring, and capable of a precision that makes him a genuinely unusual singer by any standard. And his leather and studs visual identity shaped what heavy metal looked like and sounded like for an entire generation of listeners and artists. Halford has lived for many years in a comfortable home in Phoenix, Arizona. He chose Phoenix specifically because it is not Los Angeles and it is not New York. He wanted distance from the industry centers. He values the quiet and the privacy that his home provides. He has spoken about how necessary that quiet is after the sustained intensity of touring, the need to decompress, to be a private person rather than a performer, to spend time with his cats in a house where nobody needs anything from him. The separation he maintains between the Rob Halford who performs on stage and the person he is at home is not a facade. It is a genuine psychological necessity that he has managed deliberately throughout his career. 18. Mikael Åkerfeldt. Opeth's catalog is one of the most formally adventurous in progressive metal. Their music shifts between acoustic delicacy and death metal ferocity, sometimes within a single song, and Mikael Åkerfeldt, who writes nearly everything the band produces, has maintained both a clean and a death growl vocal technique at a high level for decades. He is a musician's musician in the complete sense of that phrase. He lives in Stockholm. He has never relocated to an industry center. He describes himself honestly as a music obsessive whose primary recreational activity is collecting vinyl records. In interviews, he has said that he does not know how much money he has. He has no interest in that information. He wants to have enough to live comfortably, to support his family, and to continue buying records. The financial mechanics of the music business are genuinely not something he tracks or prioritizes. What he prioritizes is access to music and the ability to keep making it. That is the complete statement of his relationship to his career. 19. Bill Ward. Bill Ward was Black Sabbath's original drummer. His style was unusual for heavy metal, jazz-influenced, fluid, and syncopated in ways that gave the band a rhythmic complexity that their contemporaries did not share. He was present for the band's foundational recordings, the records that established what heavy metal was. His path after the band's initial era was difficult, and he has not hidden that. He battled personal demons that are part of the public record. What he has built since, through sustained effort and a genuine commitment to his own health, is a quiet, private life in Southern California. He makes solo music. He creates visual art. He has focused his energy on his own well-being. He does not live extravagantly. There have been periods of genuine struggle. He has spoken about these with honesty rather than constructing a more comfortable narrative. His story is one of the more human accounts in this group, the real cost of intense fame at a young age and the work required to find stability on the other side of it. 20. Nergal. Behemoth. Adam Darski, who performs as Nergal, fronts Behemoth, the Polish blackened death metal band that has achieved a level of commercial success and cultural prominence unusual for extreme metal. Their live shows are theatrical, elaborate, and designed to be overwhelming. Nergal's persona is confrontational and deliberately provocative. The actual person behind that persona runs businesses. He owns a barbershop in Poland. He has other commercial ventures. He approaches fitness and health as serious disciplines. He has navigated genuine public controversy in his home country and managed it with a degree of intelligence and strategic thinking that reflects someone with a clear sense of how he wants to be perceived and what he actually values. His daily life is organized around discipline and practicality. He has built his brand through consistent work rather than inherited advantage or industry machinery. He lives comfortably, but not excessively. So what does all of this tell us? Hundreds of millions of records sold, decades of global fame, and still, no obsession with wealth. Because for these legends, success was never about money. It was about music, freedom, and living life on their own terms. Drop a comment which story shocked you the most. And if you want more deep dives into the real lives of music legends, subscribe to Metal Icons, because the truth behind the legends is always louder than the music.